hang up for 1 minute. I'm going to set this up and I'll go in with you. 1 minute. Okay. How excited he is. All right, let's go ahead. We'll start. This week, our topic is client mental health advocacy. I know, are you guys getting me okay? Am I coming through all right? Or good enough?
Yeah.
Yes.
You sound good.
All right, cool. All right. So some of you know Jeff Johnston. I covered Jeff in my previous role with LPL, and Jeff is a former now. Jeff sold his business, advisor in OSJ, Premier Investments of Iowa. Jeff has been an inspiration for me. I call him, real life hero. Just a really incredible story, and took what all of us would view as just beyond a horrible circumstance, and is trying to make the most out of it and turn it into a positive, and really has gotten more and more into this topic of mental health. And it's something that Jeff and I have talked about, and others in the group, we've talked about the importance of incorporating that into your practice to some extent as an advisor. And format for today, same as always, roundtable discussion with Jeff hosting the conversation. Jeff, I'll let you take over. I'm going to hop upstairs just in case I get bounced out, and
okay.
We'll keep it going. Thanks.
Yeah. Again, thanks for John. I mean, I've known John quite a while, and I really admire what he's doing and the fact that you all are here today. So yeah, I'm Jeff Johnston. I'm from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I was a practicing OSJ. At 23, I founded Premier Investments of Iowa and had built it up to our peak. We were around 800 million of AUM. I was the OSJ. I had 9 advisors and 7 full-time staff. So I was cruising along. Life was pretty good. Married, beautiful wife, Prudence, and then 3 boys, Seth, Ian, and Roman. And, right at the point when I was patting myself on the back, feeling like I had reached that pinnacle of success at age 50, I got that call that changed everything. And our oldest son, Seth, was found dead in a hotel room, overdosed, poisoned by fentanyl at the age of 23. And so, I got to this point where I worked my butt off for 32 years to get to where I thought I had reached some type of goal or objective in my life. I realized pretty quickly that when death came into my life that I was chasing the wrong things and I needed to make some type of pivot. So Seth had lost his fight with addiction and substance abuse. He was given Adderall at 16, which is a part of my curriculum now that I talk to people about. What people don't know is that for 31 years, I was an alcoholic, 5 to 6 day a week alcoholic. I built up my firm as a functional alcoholic. That's the definition. There are many of us out there, high, alpha people, type A, attention deficit, workaholic, successful, but behind the scenes, I was a drunk, for lack of a better way to put it. I went from beer in college to wine. I became a wine snob. I had a cat named Opus, and my dog is still named Camus. And my wife and I would travel, and I drank. And the other issue I had as a advisor I never talked about is I was a compulsive gambler for about 15 years. So in my late 20s, early 30s, when I was really flush with cash because I wasn't married then, I had a very serious gambling addiction. And I never talked about it at all until I wrote my book a couple of years ago. And what I wanted people to know is that a lot of times you see this facade, and it's very common with Gen Z now when they're on TikTok and Instagram and they see the lives of other people. That's just not the way it is. And I had that presence. I had that respect in my community. I had done lots of workshops and presentations, and I was a fairly well-known advisor. I was a CHFC, but behind the scenes, I was an alcoholic and a compulsive gambler. And then on top of that, on October 4th, 2016, at age 50, I get that call that Seth died, and everything changed. I mean, I died that day. I reborn into a new person that I am today. But the problem was I gave this huge heroic speech to my 2 boys the day that Seth died, because I had to tell my 15-year-old and my 13-year-old that their older brother was dead. And if you guys are aware, if you've ever had clients that have went through this, or maybe yourself personally, but sibling bereavement is about the hardest thing for a child to deal with the rest of their life. I'd have to probably say being sexually abused would be up there or worse. But to lose a brother or a sister is worse than losing a parent or a pet or a grandparent or a niece or a nephew. It's hard to come back from. And I knew that, not at the time, but I knew that when I wrote my book. I found a lot of validation in there that we need to have these conversations. And I was naive. Adderall, I didn't know what it was. I should have. My dad was a doctor, but I was never given anything with my attention deficit. My dad told me instead it was a superpower. And in my book, I write about in 1990, there was 600,000. And you have to think about this for a minute. In 1990, there was 600,000 prescription stimulants given to kids. 20 years later, it was 3.7 million. So is this a kid problem or is this an adult diagnosis problem? Is this a big pharma problem? And it seems like the rush to judgment with labels and stigma is let's just give our kids pills. And that has backfired. And we've got this generation of the most lost, confused, anxious, depressed generation of all time coming up behind us. It's the largest human generation ever. It's 1/3 of the world's population. So I'll put that in a box and come back to what my current passion is, which is Gen Z mental health. And I'm going to talk about how that ties into advisory practices. So when Seth died, I told my two boys this, and it became a chapter in my book called The Two Roads. And I knew I had to say something impactful to Roman and Ian because they were, again, 15 and 13 at the time. And my wife was sitting over to my right, and she's an absolute wreck. And I have my two boys to my left. And I stood up and I said, boys, we've got one of two roads to go down now. We've got one road of anger, despair, and hatred, and we'll become alcoholics and addicts ourselves. Or we have a road of inspiration and motivation. And this can be the single greatest event in our life and those around us to make a difference. I'm on the second road. I ask you to join me. And that's how I presented it to the boys, as an opportunity to become better, not bitter. And my goal was to show them, be super dad, show my wife, show my boys. But I didn't. For 14 months after Seth died, I drank every single day. My wife and I did. I called my company. I said, I'm not coming to work for a year. I need to work on my self-care. And I didn't go to work for a year. Everybody took care of my clients. Everything was great. We actually grew. Our AUM went up when I took a year off, which tells you probably how valuable I was. But the reality was, for 14 months, I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to live. And I drank alcohol 7 days a week. And I just called every negative person in my head and had the biggest pity party I could have every day. Woe is me. Why me? I'm so sad. I'm depressed. And I didn't like it. I did it for 14 months. And I realized my wife was doing really bad. She was doing really bad. And I decided on December 24th, 2017, after a night of drinking, I looked in the mirror. I was 52 at the time. And I said, I'm done. And I quit. And I haven't had a drop since. So I'm going up on 5 years. And as a full-blown alcoholic, it has been the easiest thing I've ever done in my life. I don't torture myself with keeping score. I don't tell everybody I'm sober because that implies I'm in a fight. I just don't drink. It's not that complicated to me. And I help alcoholics. I go to meetings. I help because everyone's path to recovery is different. Everyone's journey through addiction and substance abuse is unique to them. And so I don't have an answer for people. I want to provide arrows in the quiver, tools in the war chest, that when you are fighting these things, that you can have lots of different coping mechanisms to go to. Mine's easy. I don't go to 12 steps. I go to my son's gravesite. It's all I need. And I thought me quitting drinking would help, but it didn't help my wife. And on June 29th, 2021, the day after our youngest son's 18th birthday, my wife died from alcohol abuse. She was 46 years old. We're married 21 years. So this isn't a sad story. I am at the best place I've ever been in my entire life at age 57. And John knows this. I talk to him weekly. I work my ass off. I meditate. I don't watch anything negative on TV. I exercise 2 hours a day. I don't eat a lot of meat. I don't drink. I'm not telling you any of this to try to tell you I'm better than anybody. I'm just saying, if I didn't do these things, I would be joining my son and my wife. And I know that for a fact because the Christmas after my wife died, I had a gun to my head. And I'm laying in my closet 2 years ago. This is after I wrote my book. This is after I've done my podcast. This is I'm Mr. Living Undeterred. I've got it all figured out, right? No, I had a gun to my head, had the cock, I had it pulled back, and I was at complete peace of ending my life 2 years ago. And I didn't do it, obviously, because I kept having the visions of my 2 boys pop into my head. And then what really made a difference for me is thinking about my granddaughter. You see, when Seth died 3 weeks later, his daughter was born. And her name is Brighton. And she's with me today. She's at the mall right now with my other sons. She's 6. And Brighton's the name of our app we're launching in July for Gen Z mental health. And it's not spelled the same as her name, but it means the same to me. And so I've committed all my money, all my time, all my resources to changing Gen Z mental health. That's my advocacy. And what I want to do is use my contacts I have in the financial services industry to talk about these issues with advisors, because not only was I an alcoholic, I had personal mental health challenges. I battled a son with addiction and ended up burying him, battled alcoholism with my wife, ended up burying her. And I'm sick and tired of people dying. And the financial services industry can step up and they can take the chains here, the bull by the horns, and we can start being better advocates for mental health. We can save all the money we want for our clients. They can count their chips all day long, but if they don't have the quality of life, it doesn't matter. And I'm telling you right now, with Gen Z being a third of the world's population, and Gen Z is the most financially challenged generation of all time. And for older Gen Z, which is 18 to 26, the number one stressor is money. If we don't have these conversations with our clients and with their children about a healthy relationship with money, then what the hell are we doing preparing them for retirement when all they're going to do is leave all this money to this generation that's a train wreck? And the statistics validate that generation, it's basically 12 to 26, that's Gen Z. They are the most financially challenged generation of all time. And they shouldn't be, because there's more abundance and knowledge and information out there than ever. But they're getting their guidance from TikTok and Instagram and YouTubers that are driving Lamborghinis at 22. And that's what they think making money is all about. And so I wanted you to tell you about my son and about my wife to kind of set the template and a little bit about my background. I sold my investment company. I'm not doing this anymore. And I'm plowing all the money I made in the investment career into mental health advocacy for kids. And that's what I will do till my last breath. And I think the financial services industry has a massive, massive responsibility and a massive opportunity to take this head on and do their part to teaching and showing young adults healthy relationships with money. So when we designed our app, I have 3 core tenets of mental health for Gen Z, and that's health, wealth, and purpose. So one part of our aspect of our app is wealth, and we are asking for help from advisors. I've got some great input for some very well-known firms that are helping us design the curriculum on the app, that when kids use this app for their mental health planning, that we have the resources coming from the industry. There's great talent in this industry that has great information. It just needs to get disseminated out there. And so, our plan is to introduce this app through schools and colleges initially, and then license with schools or philanthropists or donors, so we can offer this free to schools, and then start to show them how to, what I'm coining is to build the nation's first one-page mental wellness portfolio. And the way I came up with that term, I trademarked that term, mental wellness portfolio. But if you think about it, when you guys or gals invest money for a client, you diversify, right? Stocks, bonds, and real estate. That's kind of the 3 core asset classes. Well, why don't we do that with mental health? We don't. We send them to a psychiatrist or a therapist. They say, hey, take this pill or go work out or go lose weight or quit drinking. And it's a big game of whack-a-mole. But mental health should be diversified no more, no less than your money is. And we do that through the 3 asset classes of optimal mental health, which are health, wealth, and purpose. Those are what we've determined on our team is as the 3 asset classes of mental health. So if we can take the financial services industry that we've all done a good job with, and we can now pivot to the mental health industry using the same ideas with planning, diversification, I think there's an opportunity not only for this industry, the financial services industry, to be the leader in mental health advocacy for not just advisors, but for their clients and for their children. So that's a 10-minute or 12-minute, little background about what I do. And so Living Undeterred has been kind of the brand I've been working on. I do a podcast called Living Undeterred. I do a radio show every week, live radio show called the Living Undeterred Mental Health Hour. And last summer, I got an RV and went around the United States for 95 days with my 2 boys and met with 38 nonprofits in 35 states, all about advocacy, being vulnerable, and sharing. And I met some tremendous people on that journey that are a big part of my life today. So, but any questions, John? I don't know what time frame you had in regards to this, but I can ramble forever.
That was a real good intro. And like we had talked about, Jeff, and I think you hit the nail on the head. This is a significant challenge that can be met by the industry, as well as a significant opportunity for the advisors who address it. So I guess questions, thoughts from the gallery. I think you did a very, very good job introducing the topic. Thank you, Jeff. I
have some thoughts, questions. I don't know. My dog just felt I needed a hug. He came to give it to me. Unfortunately, I work with 2 other financial advisors who have lost kids to overdose.
Man,
so I think, I'm sorry. I think I have 2 boys. They're 10 and 11. And I've never done drugs. So for me, the whole drug, anything, is petrifying. I started drinking at 21. I have a drink here and there. Maybe I'm a functional alcoholic. I'm not really sure where that falls, but
right.
I don't know. But I think the purpose for a lot of kids is not there.
Yeah.
And having my own kids being evaluated and recommended therapy and medication, which we've gone the therapy route, not so much the medication route, because I don't think they need it. I think for many parents, it's an easy out.
Yes, I agree.
Because some kids are just bored. They need more. They need to run more. They need to do more. And they just have the energy that they have nowhere to go. And I don't think that that's an answer for every child. But unfortunately, my 10-year-old, my now 11-year-old, when he was 10, came to me and said, "Mom, I think I have ADD or ADHD." And I'm like, "Why do you think that?" Like, he self-diagnosed, and he was like, "Well, because all my friends have this, and maybe that's why school is so hard, and maybe I just need medication because a lot of my friends are getting medication, so maybe I need it too."
Wow.
And I was like, "All right, so we'll talk about it." But it's just so prevalent. And instead of saying, "Yeah, school is hard, maybe I should study," it's like, "Oh, I need a magic pill because that's what helps my friend."
And that's the society we're at today.
Yes.
And
yes,
I wanted to just inject something here for a moment, because you brought up some good points about this issue. In my bubble, I don't allow anyone to use the word disorder at the end of attention deficit. And I'll tell you why. I'm not a doctor. I have full-blown attention deficit. My dad was a doctor, and my dad would not allow me to use the word disorder. My dad told me it was a superpower. So instead of giving me Ritalin and all these other things, he just said, "Go outside and play with your 3 brothers. Go fight in the woods. Go build a fort. Do whatever." And that's what we did. And so now at 15, when Seth was given Strattera, at 15 years old, I chronicle this in my book. I should have known better. I should have stepped in, but I didn't get a second opinion. And Adderall's just, watered down methamphetamines at its purest sense. And, I have to take that to my grave that I didn't get a second opinion. I just accepted it as the answer. So what I tell people is this: I'm not a doctor. If you're taking Adderall, take it. I'm the last person on the planet to tell you not to take it. I can only tell you my story and what happened in my family. But I know when I reframe it now and I talk to schools and I say, think of attention deficit as a spectrum, as we all have it. So, John, maybe you're a 1. Mitch, maybe you're a 9. Maybe I'm a 7. We all have it. And if we all have it, then kids feel a little bit better that they're all in the same boat instead of, oh, John has attention deficit, but Mitch doesn't. So now all of a sudden, John feels like this demon's on his shoulder. Why doesn't Mitch have it? I don't understand it. Well, it was subjective. Somebody just diagnosed Mitch to have it. So I've kind of thought to myself, why don't we as parents and as adults, we don't use the word disorder around the kids. We can use it around each other. Mitch and I can debate the merits of the word disorder till we turn blue. But why does a 10-year-old have to hear this conversation? Why do they have to?
From kids. It's not necessarily from adults. They hear it from other kids.
Understand. Yep. Again.
So it's not even that. And the conversation that I had with my son was, well, let's look at it in reality is when you study for a test, you get an A. When you don't study, you don't get an A.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily that you have a disorder, disability, or whatever. You just didn't study.
Yeah.
Very simple. So he kind of went back and was like, all right, I guess. But I think the mental health issue, I'm actually, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this book, but I just started listening on audiobook to a book. I'll tell you what it's called. It's called Of Boys and Men.
I've heard of it. I've been referred to that by more than one person.
And he talks about specifically why men in our society are more suffering and will have less opportunities and so on because there's less purpose, there's less support for them.
I think we can fix that though. I do think there's a way to put purpose into the hearts of kids. I really do.
What do you think? What do you think?
Well, purpose doesn't normally come to you. You just, it's revealed at some stage of your life. Like in my case, it was revealed to me through death. I tell young adults that the best way to get purpose, instead of waiting for a sign or waiting for something, just be of service, be in service, be active, be giving to somebody, whether it's a humane society or working at a nursing home or picking up litter. Just do something in service of others. And that gives kids a baseline beginning sense of purpose. You can't tell a kid to go find purpose.
But that comes from parents.
Yeah, I agree.
And parents are too busy and too tired. That's what I hear all the time.
Yeah.
They want their kids on iPads watching YouTube.
And I'm guilty of that. I mean, when my granddaughter's over here, she's on her iPad. Yeah, I'm not perfect. I just have talked to so many advocates in this realm that I've been able to glean a few things from one person, a few things from another. I will tell you right now that if we don't do something different and expect the results to change, then we're in serious trouble because it's hard to find any statistic. And I'm saying anything from suicidal ideation to depression to anxiety to, obesity rates in the United States. It's hard to find any statistic that has gone the other way. Especially if you look at 5 or 10 year rolling averages on these statistics. They're there, but they're hard to find. And it shouldn't be that way. It should not be that way. We should be seeing at this point, with all the abundance of knowledge and information we have now with artificial intelligence, we should be able to design programs and systems that can benefit these kids, but it's not working. And I'm optimistic we can. I mean, someone's got to be optimistic. There's so much misery and despair out there anyway, and I don't have time for that. So we've got to find the mental health warriors that can get out there and lead by example. So if you're drinking alcohol, but you're telling your kids not to drink, well, you got to start self-assessing whether that's a good strategy. I wish I would have quit long ago before I did. Maybe that would have helped Seth. I don't know. Those are scenarios I try not to play very often, but I think the challenge obviously is taking the one thing that's their worst enemy, that's their phone, and they don't know it, but it is their worst enemy, and making it their biggest ally. How do you make that pivot? And I think some of the people I've talked with and some of the things we're doing over at the projects we're working on, I think we're getting close to finding some solutions for people. If maybe they're Band-Aids, I don't know, but isn't the objective to not die? I mean, shouldn't we just focus on things to keep us alive and then worry about everything else later?
What do you think are the things that people can do as an overall to help kids?
Yeah, I think one thing with kids, it's part of the curriculum that we have that's being beta tested right now, is this teaching them to build like a personal mission statement. So on our app, we've designed this thing called a unique life statement. It's a ULS and it's Chat GPT driven, but we're teaching kids how to form like a life sentence. My life sentence is clear. It's on the back of my t-shirts. Purpose becomes passion when it gets personal. And that's my mission statement. Purpose becomes passion when it gets personal. What I try to tell people that don't have purpose is find something personal. So something in your life that's personal, whether your mom had breast cancer or your grandpa died of, drunk driver, or anything in your life that's personal, and make that a passion, and it will become your purpose. So you can play that backwards. Find something personal, make it a passion, it'll become purpose. And that's what I talk to kids about. Instead of telling them, hey, don't do this, or you have to do this, that didn't work when our parents told us things. So why would we expect our kids to change behavior because we're telling them what to do or what not to do? They need to self-assess, and they need to autonomously build this mental health plan in order for it to work. I think the evidence has shown, especially with Gen Z, that they're the very first generation. This is really good news, guys. The first generation of all time to have mental health as the number one New Year's resolution. Now think about that for a second. That's huge. Our kids are telling us they are aware they need help. It's up to us to build the systems and processes to help them. And that's I think that bodes really well for advocacy, specifically for Gen Z. Largest generation of all time, most financially challenged, most lost, depressed generation of all time, i.e. purpose. But they're the most eager to get help. And they are getting it. 37% increase year over year of Gen Zers getting mental health treatment. So think about that. 37% increase of Gen Zers getting. So they acknowledge they need help and they're getting help. It's just that what they're getting isn't working. And we know big pharma isn't the answer.
So that's kind of like, I deal with this a lot. I also have a brother-in-law who's schizophrenic. So I do a lot of mental health research for many different things.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, we have a lot of mental health. We have a lot more medication nowadays versus 40, 50 years ago. We're talking about it a lot more because my parents have never talked to me about depression, anxiety, my self-esteem, or anything that wasn't like, we never had those conversations growing up. But yet the suicide rates, the depression rates, anxiety rates are all skyrocketing.
Yeah.
From where we were. Was it not diagnosed? Or are we now talking about it more, and therefore people are like within themselves, like, wait, maybe I am, maybe there's a problem. So
it's the first sentence you said, that there was more help. That is very debatable. Most of the advocates in the industry are saying we are woefully unprepared to handle the need out there, the demand for mental health. I think there's one school psychiatrist per like 300 students so. Yes.
I never knew. I don't even know if my school back in the day had a school psychiatrist.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Yeah.
So now it's like, why do people now have so much mental health treatment needs?
Yeah, I don't
remember having that conversation growing up.
Yeah. No, well, I didn't either. I'm 57 now. We never talked about it. I think it comes down to this fact. There's no debate that we're the most connected we've ever been as humans. I mean, I could get on the internet and find pretty much now with, artificial intelligence and so forth, it's even easier. But the problem is, and the connection we have with other things and other people, it's the disconnection we have with ourselves. We're just so massively disconnected with ourselves. We look into the mirror at the end of the day and we just don't really see anything looking back at us. And it comes down to a combination of living in the past, anxious about the future, and neglecting the present. And when we talk to kids, we talk about depression being looking backwards, anxiety is looking forwards. You spend 85% of your day either in depression or anxiety mode. And that's a fact, because 85% of high school kids have some form of depression or anxiety. It's probably higher. I think it's 100% personally. But where is the time being spent in the moment? I had an advocate say to me, we don't have attention deficit issues with kids today. We have nature deficit issues. I mean, when's the last time you looked out your window and saw 20 kids out there playing flag football or playing basketball? It ain't happening. I saw
1 day a week, 1 hour.
It's disgusting. It really is. I think that's the first thing we could do as parents, and get our kids outside to play more. It's just free. There's no pill. There's no diagnosis for that. I saw a chart the other day, and this validates what I just said. It showed like 100 years ago where you were born, and the circle that your parents allowed you to go outside and wander and see the world. And it was like this mile circle around the house. And then the next generation, it got down to half of that. The next generation, it got down. And now literally it's a circle around your house. And that's how we're creating this paranoid society of kids today, afraid to go outside their driveway because mom and dad are peering out the window. Someone's going to abduct them. Something bad's going to happen. And that isn't helping mental health with kids. They need to learn to fall down. They need to learn to get the broken arm. They need to do the things that they can build resiliency and build some mental toughness with. But I don't see that happening. I just don't. I'm looking out my back window here, and I've got 5 houses next to me, and they have kids and grandkids. I never see them out in the yard playing. So I think there's some things we can start at. I think there's enough fingers to point around to blame for this problem, but we're past the blame part. We got to find ways to get kids to feel when they look in the mirror that their best friend is looking back at them. And, one other thing too, I do want to comment, it isn't just those that are addicted to drugs and alcohol that are dying. Fentanyl changes everything. Fentanyl contributes to 80% of the overdose deaths in the United States. And I can tell you right now, I know moms and dads that have lost 12, 13, 14-year-olds buying Percocet, Adderall, Xanax on Snapchat. I can give you their names. I can give you their books. I can give you their podcasts. I know at least a dozen. And I'm talking kids under 15. These aren't addicts. These aren't alcoholics. These are kids trying to buy Xanax on Snapchat. And there's 80 to 90,000 drug dealers a day on Snapchat. That was a quote from the DEA a year ago. We have to have these conversations. And, you can look over your shoulder and say, I'm monitoring my kid's Snapchat. They're speaking in hieroglyphics with drug dealers. Pictures of buses, pictures of penguins, those all mean certain things to drug dealers. So, I hate to say it, but I'm in the trenches every day. I see this stuff and it's terrifying. And my kids are older now. I'm happy for that. I don't know what the answer is, but I know what the answer isn't. And that's keep doing what we're doing, or just say it's going to happen to somebody else. 825 Americans every single freaking day are dying from the deaths of despair. 825. Alcohol, suicide, overdose. I have 2 of those in my family, and I almost took my life 2 years ago. So I would have had all 3. I would have had all 3 of those in my family just over a 5-year period of time. So 825, that's too many. That's too many. And I'm tired of it. And I'm on a mission to find out. I want to find those people that want to join me. And that's what keeps me up at night.
Yeah, so you're saying we should let them go and let them fall, but at the same time, how do we watch them? So my kid, my older one's 11.
Yeah.
He wants Snapchat, he wants TikTok. He doesn't have access to it yet. We blocked it.
Good for you.
But all his friends do. So it's a fight every day.
Yeah.
To say no. Every single day, he fights us on it. And the question is, you want to let them fall here and there and but at the same time, you don't want them to fall. Because are they going to fall?
Like I said, with fentanyl now, you can be doing everything right as a parent, and your son may be at a party and he's 15 and they're having pizza, and some kid says, "Oh, you want to stay up all night and watch movies?" Yeah, well, here's a pill I got from my parents' medicine cabinet. Well, they didn't. They bought it off Snapchat or something. Kid, they lie, and you pop it, just expecting to stay up late. So you can do everything you can as a parent, but at the end of the day, I think communication with your kids. Seth's death my other two boys were 15 and 13. The first thing I did is say, okay, let's just lay it on the line. Let's just bear all. I'm an alcoholic, boys. I'm confessing that to you. I had a gambling problem. I've told him everything. So my youngest son, Roman, just last year was experimenting with marijuana. And you would think your brother died, your mom died. What are you doing, son? But no, I didn't judge him. I said, thanks for telling me, Roman. I'm so happy we could talk about this. Your son, your brother, and your mom are proud of you. You tried marijuana. That's okay. I'm not judging you. You're here. You didn't die. There wasn't fentanyl in it. Thank God. You may not get that chance next time. And so I think the answer is communicate with your kids, have these conversations, do the best that you can. Don't be naive, but don't be paranoid. I mean, there's more odds in your favor than there are against you. But fentanyl has moved the goalposts mid-game in the middle of the Super Bowl. And it's hard. It's very difficult. And I don't see it getting better. Fentanyl, we can eradicate every grain of fentanyl. It takes 2 or 3 grains of fentanyl to kill a human, by the way, 2 milligrams. That's like enough to put on Lincoln's nose on a penny. Think about that. And drug dealers aren't, they're not pharmacists. They're not out there with gloves on, trying to dosage everything correctly. They're just trying to make money.
But how are they making money if people are dying? Why are they?
I get that all the time. They don't, first of all, people are dying and they don't care because there's more people living that are addicted. Fentanyl is highly addicted, 100 times more addicted than morphine. And there's always going to be people behind them. They don't, drug dealers, it's a multi-billion-dollar business. It's like Disney World saying, well, what's going to happen when all the kids are 9 years or kids grow up and they're not going to go to Disney World? Well, there's always kids behind them. Drug dealers know the same thing. There's always going to be 8, 9, 10-year-olds coming up behind them. They don't care. There is a drug called Trank on the market now. There's a drug called ISO on the market. These are 100 times stronger than fentanyl. And so, what's the right answer? I don't know. I mean, geez, we confiscated I don't know how many, 5 times more fentanyl across the border the last 12 months than we did the previous border, but deaths went up another 10,000 people. So there's not a linear relationship. Just because we take the supply off the market, people assume that we're going to save lives. It doesn't work that way. The best example is OxyContin. You guys seen the movie Dope Sick with Michael Keaton? Mm-hmm. Great example. Big Pharma got the Sackler family, Purdue Pharmaceuticals, basically got shut down. I think it was, I don't remember what year, but everyone said, well, we'll just take OxyContin off the market. We'll have doctors stop prescribing it. That'll save lives. You know what happened? Oxy prescriptions went down 60%. Deaths went up 100. Why do you think that happened? Anybody have a guess?
Getting it outside of the doctor.
There you go. And a lot of these rules and regulations aren't coming from people that have any experience using drugs. Zero. They have no lived experience. So they're setting the laws. They're saying, well, we're going to cut the prescriptions down. That'll save lives. No, it won't. People are using fentanyl for legitimate pain purposes, or they have withdrawals and detox that'll kill them. They'd rather die than go through detox. They are going to find those drugs on the streets, and drug dealers know this. Every time we make stronger rules and regulations, the drug dealers are winning every single time. So I don't know what the answers are. I just know the current way we're doing things isn't working. It isn't working.
They should legalize all drugs?
I have my thoughts on that. I don't know if this is the platform to share that.
I was going to ask if we wanted to get into that, Jeff, but I want to also hear from others. Maybe that's another conversation, because I do want to get into that at some point.
Listen, John, I'm tired of people dying. I'm tired of people being unhappy. I'm tired of people giving up. And, we can lock up every drug dealer. We can take all the fentanyl off the street and it's not going to change a damn thing. I don't think so. I think it's deeper. It's changing behavior. It's getting to kids to intervene before the intervention. We have a society where we wait till a kid falls through and then we come running in to save them. It's too late at that point. It's too late. We need to get these kids 7, 8, 9. My granddaughter's 6. She's here. We're already having these conversations. But what is addiction? What is withdrawal? When you don't have your iPad, how do you feel? Well, that's what mommy or dad feels like when they don't have alcohol. And you know what? You could say, well, that's too early. Well, I have a child I buried. You tell me it's too early. I'm not going to buy it. It's not too early. I don't think there is an age you can have these conversations too early with kids. They know a lot more than what they're telling you they know. Trust me. They know a lot more.
I think you had one of the best things my dad ever did when my parents got divorced.
Teresa wanted to jump in. Eric, we'll go to you first, and then Teresa, go ahead.
Just real quick. One of the best things my dad ever did for me when I was about 8 or 9, and my mom was an alcoholic, was in car rides, things like that, explain what addiction was, that she doesn't have a choice. It's a disease, it's not, she's a good mom, but this problem, those kinds of things. And that really, really helped a lot.
How old were you, Eric?
Like 8, 9.
That's great, man. That's a beautiful story, because your mom kind of just planted that little seed, but that's what we can be doing as parents, is just planting these little seeds along the way, and they can harvest later. I love that, Eric. That's great.
Teresa, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as a parent, I think the worst thing you can do is assume that your child's not old enough for a conversation.
Yeah.
They're likely already having it, if not with you, with somebody else, whether that's somebody at school or somebody online, right?
Yeah.
And it's still shocking to me every so often. My kids are 12 and 14, and I can bring up a topic and say, we haven't talked about this before. Do you have any questions about, such and such? And my 12-year-old go, Mom, like, I learned about that, 3 years ago. You're not telling me anything I didn't already know. And I'm like, wow, okay.
You're late to the party, Mom.
Like, it's shocking to realize sometimes what they already know. But information is at the tip of their fingers on a daily basis. From, when I was a kid, it was, what were the kids talking about at the playground, right? It was, well, who said that? What school do they go to, right? Like, that's a mute point now. It doesn't even matter what school they go to, what state they live in, what country they live in. That information is floating out there on just such a massive level that my only goal is just try to minimize my kids' exposure to as much of that information online as possible, by seeking to hit it head on, saying, if you have questions, I'm your source.
Yeah.
If there's something you want to talk about or something you're curious about, you come to your parents, and I will always be honest with you. I'm always going to give you an honest answer, right? Yeah. I may say sometimes, okay, well, it's a really generic description of something. And they're like, well, but more questions, I have questions. And I'll say, I'm not sure it's appropriate for me to talk to you about that further or explain it in more detail right now. Let me do a little bit of reading and thinking and come back to you tomorrow. So that, just so that they know I'm not trying to avoid their questions.
Right.
But I want to make sure I give them the best information to use. Right. And that's really, I think, the best thing to do. Always answer the question. Always.
Imagine just this amazing opportunity the financial services industry has, Teresa, to embrace this mental wellness issue as a complement to setting up 401ks and 403bs and IRAs, things like that. It's like, we also provide through workshops and Zoom meetings and bringing in experts that can speak. I'm actually speaking at the end of the month at Carson Wealth Management on the 30th. I'm bringing my RV down there, and I'm speaking for one of their, I don't know what event it is, but Ron's got me down there for 45 minutes. And Ron's another innovator out there that's really interested in mental health. And I can certainly see lots of practices like Carson Wealth that are going to be putting in mental health advocacy, whether it's people like me coming in and speaking, or other advisors that have written books on this. I know of one advisor that I've met that has a book aimed at Gen Z. But think of the value add. If you're a financial services industry in your community, you're the first one, you're the first firm to actually really embrace a healthy relationship with money. Everyone else is out there peddling dinners to get you to save more or to spend less. How about that relationship? The behavioral economics behind how we have a relationship with money, but then putting in the mental health aspect. There's been lots of authors that have talked about relationships with money, but not really from a mental health angle. I think Daniel Crosby is probably the best one out there. I've got all of his books. I've had him on my podcast. He's actually in my book. He's probably one of the best ones out there, I think, that's been championed the mental health aspects of this industry. But I mean, what a great opportunity, I think, for every financial advisor to really look at this as a value add service to your clients. And it just keeps them closer to your firm than just saving them money or making them money. Now you've got them really focused on the why. How can we get purpose out of your money? How many people die with lots of money that, darn well, if they knew they were going to die, they probably would have been a little more philanthropic. They probably would have given more to charities, but they didn't. They just hoarded their money because they had a poor relationship with it. And that's driven out of fear and scarcity. That's why people hoard.
I just posted an article yesterday on LinkedIn talking about the measure of wealthy, and that the majority of respondents of this survey, particularly Gen Z and millennials, characterize their measure of wealth based on their well-being and not on their money.
Yeah.
It's not about how much money can I accumulate. It's about how healthy and how well am I living? And then the money is the secondary piece of that. And it did make me sit and think, how am I approaching this with my clients? How am I having that conversation? And I have very few clients who are like, make me as much money as possible.
Now that's Gen Z and millennials, you said, right, Teresa?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gen Z and millennials that's having that conversation. They're more concerned about their measure of wealth is their well-being.
I love it. And that validates our research that we did before our app, is that Gen Z is more likely to do business with companies that do give back to the environment, to global warming, to the oceans, to world hunger. Gen Z is very philanthropic in their heart. They're just not in their pocketbook yet. They don't have the money yet, but they will. They're 4x purchasing power over the next 24 months. So a lot of Gen Zers are coming into the market that are going to have disposable income. And like I said, this is just like a really opportunity for our industry to really embrace this. And I'm happy John asked me to come in and speak with you guys.
We talk about this too. So my brother had an alcohol addiction, I introduced him to Minnesota Adult Teen Challenge, which was a great experience. And also my son dealt with, I would call it bullying with a little bit of depression. But I tell you one thing, that I'm part of Kingdom Advisors, which has been absolutely incredible experience. Love it to well-being. And I taught confirmation for both my daughter and my son. And, having that opportunity to be with kids. And one of the things we did every day, we do this every evening still, my daughter's 24, my son's 20, is we just do highs and lows for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Having simple conversation, having an open framework for them to talk through that. And what I've learned is, create an environment for your kids and for other kids around. A lot of kids come over to our house just to have supper with us. We know we're going to do a prayer, we're going to do highs and lows. They know what's going to come through that, but create that environment. The other thing too is I noticed physical activity. Kids get bored.
Mm-hmm.
We get bored, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when they get bored, what are they going to do? They're going to hop on their phones. You did bring that up, Jeff, as far as physical activity. When I was a kid, I fell asleep before I hit the pillow.
Me too.
Today's kids are staying up so late on their phones, and they're seeing what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
We need to be with them doing that physical activity. We need to be that mirror for them, to be with them all the time, is what I've learned. Model that behavior activity, model that, be that, show them that. I'm a financial planner, doing this for 31 years, have a faith background. I'm not a psychologist, but I tell you what, I've got some great counselors. If I'm listening, but not only listening, if I'm hearing what my clients are saying, that's the biggest thing I can do. I can be an advocate for them. I can introduce and make the right instructions. I'm probably more of a marriage counselor than I want to be. Yeah. Right. But I also need to recognize where my limit is, where my fine line is, as far as, I want to counsel and I'll be there and I'll listen, but I'm not a psychologist or anything like that. So making sure that you do have trusted relationships to introduce is something that I found too, Jeff.
And Mitch, I want to add that because I like your perspective there, because there is this feeling of obligation that we have as advisors that, I remember back in the day, I was practicing for 32 years, where I had a couple clients that had their children were gambling problems or alcoholic problems. And it was always on eggshells, these conversations. And it was like, I'm like, well, I just want to manage your money. I don't really know much about the other stuff. This is in my head now. Obviously I gave them empathy and all that, but I think now what I know about mental health advocacy is I would have been a much better advisor having more knowledge on mental health advocacy, not more knowledge on investing and asset allocation and all that stuff, but more about the human element behind relationships with money. And so, yeah, I like the way you said that. And I can certainly relate.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
One little comment is the medical community, I don't think is on the same side sometimes. When my daughter was 16 and the doctor had said that I said Adderall because she had ADD.
Yeah.
And I'm going, no. And then they, it was kind of like a team up and it was just basically, look, if I told you that your daughter had a heart problem, you would not deny her the and then I was the medicine denier. And then finally I just gave in. I'm like, I'm not a doctor. Okay. And now she's 20. So now I don't have that control anymore. And I really regret, because there was a time that they ran out of Adderall at Walgreens.
They ran out in the United States this last year.
Yeah. And to see her freaking out, not being able to get her Adderall. And then I'm going, well, shoot. And then if anytime, I'm trying to say, we need to slow it down, wean you off, because she's not stretching her. I use the analogy, not stretching a rubber band. I'm like, you got to stretch. You can't just say, oh, well, I'm not going to have anxiety. Oh, I'm not going to have, and I said, so you never learn to deal with it. But it's
100%.
But it seems like the medical community turned me actually feeling like the bad guy, that I'm not, I was more interested in not having the drug than doing what was right for my daughter.
A lot of times, Tracy, it's a framing issue. It's how it's framed. It's how it's presented. And so we present these things as disorders. We present these things as, not normal, and that you have it and somebody else doesn't. And I think the reality is, if we sat down with most people, that we all have some elements of all these things, whether it's, just, I don't want to say bipolar or schizophrenia, but I'm sure the lowest levels, like a 1 out of 10 on bipolar or schizophrenia, that would pick up a lot of people that aren't diagnosed. Depression too. It's like we throw depression around like, oh, he's depressed, he's not. We all are. Get over it. Some of us, it's very minimal. Some of us, we don't sleep well. How do you define depression? There's a clinical definition. I just think it's this continued period of sadness, and that's not a clinical definition. That's just me. And a lot of it's just reflecting on your past too much. You don't normally get depressed about your future. You get anxious about your future. And it's how we present this to kids. Again, I think we have a golden opportunity here. I have like 3 or 4 minutes and I have to jump, John, if that's okay. I have another Zoom I have to go on. Was this supposed to be over in an hour?
We have them down as 45, but we're good. We run over a lot.
I have another Zoom I got to jump on, but no, I'm excited. This is coming from somebody who's dealt with, obviously some tough things, as you all have. If I talk to you individually long enough, I'm pretty sure I could pull some intimate details out of your life that would put you on par with what we all go through. My story is just my story. But, with that, we can either have this defined as negatively or positively. And I know for me, I'm not going to allow it to be negatively. Do I have my bad moments? Every fucking day. I'm not going to lie to you. Every day. But I embrace them like a mental health workout. I think of it as like going to the gym. It's like, I feel it coming, cry, get it over with, do whatever you got to do. But 100% of the time, 100% of the time, I feel better when I'm done crying. 100% of the time, I feel better when I get off my bike or I go to the gym. I don't always feel that way when I start, but I've never had a workout I felt worse. I've never cried and felt worse. So I know those two things going in. That's why I do these things every single day. I cry every single day and I welcome it. I don't fight it. And especially for men, this is huge, especially for young men. We got to get young men to really open up and be able to hug another friend and cry. There's nothing to be shameful about that with men. So anyway, I got off on a tangent. Sorry.
Thank you.
You commented about hugs, and there's a study that shows that humans need 8 hugs a day at minimum in order to produce enough dopamine to feel happy. And I try and embrace that with clients, with my kids, with friends, just hugs, right?
I love it.
Very hard to do that when they communicate over. I'm sorry. I was just going to say it's very hard for the kids to do them when their main communication is over computers or games or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. You think about how much time your kids spend a day. I mean, I know my kids spend a lot of time, especially in the summer, on electronic devices, but it's, hey, I make sure I go in and, you know, I'll put my hand on their shoulder and say, hey, how's it going? Could I get a hug right now? Right.
I love it.
And they're totally fine to put their electronics down and take a hug for a minute. Right. Another thing that I realized, this was something I realized when I was a brand new parent, was, you know, your kids would like come up and like they give you these big long hugs, you know, they just like wrap into you and they don't like go very soon, right? They like hold on to you for a really long time. And I realized that someday I was going to miss that. And then it occurred to me, I bet my parents do. And I changed my perspective on hugs. I'm now the person that if you hug me, I will not let go first. And again, clients, friends, family members, if you give me a hug, I will hug you as long as you're engaged in that hug.
Yeah, it's, you know, a lot of it's attention, Teresa. That's the thing. And that's what we're trying to teach kids. It's where are you spending your attention? Because, you know, you have limited attention during the course of the day. And are you spending it on one thing versus another? But yeah, just think hugs and those things are important. You know, I text my boys routinely that I love them out of the blue, you know, little things like that. But it's 12 o'clock. I have literally about 30 seconds. But
nice to see you so much.
Yeah, John, I'll let you wrap it up. But again, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Facebook. I'll connect with you, whatever. And again, John, love you like a brother, man.
Love you, Jeff. Thank you, everybody.